Hello, Jenny. How cool was that introduction?
I
That
know,
was absolutely unbelievable.
I know. I was a bit absorbed in it. I forgot that we were going to go live, to be honest.
I know. I feel like my background is such a disappointment now. I should
I
have had
know.
like cool gothic stuff.
So brilliant. Well, hello, everybody. I am Jennie Godfrey, and I'm the author of The List of Suspicious Things. And I forgot to bring a copy of it into the room because I would have held it up and said, I'm the mystery and thriller monthly pick. So that's my plug. But more importantly, I'm really honoured to be here this evening to talk with Ross Montgomery about the murder at the world's end, which was, you see, you were more
Yeah.
prepared, which was published in the US last week. So, the way this is going to run is Ross and I are going to talk about the book for about 15 minutes. Then I'm going to go to the pre-submitted questions that you sent. We got loads and
Yeah.
they are excellent. So I'll be having to kind of cherry pick some of the wonderful questions that you asked, and we'll get to those as soon as possible. That's if we stop talking, because Ross and I are both talkers. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I think we're going to learn this the hard way. I think
Yes.
it's going to be a chat marathon.
Yes. So let's start with an introduction to Ross. And this is going to make me chuckle slightly because we do actually know each other. So this feels very official. But I am going to do the proper official introduction to Ross. So Ross Montgomery is the number one New York Times best-selling author of award-winning books for children. His novels have twice been shortlisted for Costa Children's Book of the Year and twice selected as the Waterstones Children's Book of the Month, as well as chosen for the Sunday Times Top 100 Modern Children's Classics. His latest, I Am Rebel. I know this is really embarrassing, isn't it?
My
His
God.
latest, I Am Rebel, was a Barnes& and Noble monthly pick and Children's Book of the Year. It was an immediate bestseller, and it was Waterstone's Children's Book of the Year as well. And he lives in London with his wife, a baby, and a cat named Fun Bobby, which is my favourite fact about your life, Ross. And The Murder at World's End is was an instant bestseller in the UK and is his first adult novel. Now, I haven't told Ross this, but I met him after his publisher in the UK sent me a beautiful limited hardback special edition proof of The Murder at World's End. I'd not read anything by Ross at this point. Um, and although as a bookseller, because I'm a fellow bookseller, I had heard of him, of course. And I'm going to be really honest, I wasn't sure it was going to be my cup of tea. But his publishers had sent me this beautiful, very expensive proof, and I thought I'd better read it. And I loved it. Genuinely, absolutely love this book. There is such life, energy, and heart in Ross's writing that I became an immediate fan. So, welcome, Ross. Thank you so much for joining me.
What an introduction. I really like it's just the best thing is to have a Zoom with somebody saying amazing things about you. So I'm chuffed about
Yeah,
that. Thank you.
it's all downhill from here. I'm going to ask really mean questions now, but
It's
let's
just a
start with an easy
critique from
one.
here on out.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll start with an easy one, which is, can you just tell us a bit about the murder at World's End?
I absolutely can. So, The Murder at World's End is set in the year 1910, and it's set during a real life, real world event that happened, which was the Halley's Comet Panic. And what that was Halley's Comet was due to pass the Earth in May 1910, and for lots of various reasons, it caused a worldwide panic. People were absolutely convinced that it was going to end the world by about 100 different ways. People thought it was going to flood the atmosphere with poisonous gases or collide headlong into us. And there were riots, there were stampedes. For like a brief moment in time, about half the world lost their minds. And in the book, one such person is the Viscount of World's End, which is a remote tidal island off the coast of Cornwall that I've invented for the book. He believes that the way to survive the apocalypse he thinks is going to happen is to make his mansion completely airtight from the outside elements. So every door is locked and bolted, every window is sealed, every chimney and fireplace is blocked. Every member of the household and every guest is put inside their own individual bedrooms, locked inside, and their doorways sealed. And the plan is that means that they're going to be the only people in the world who are going to survive when the rest of the world dies horribly. But in the morning, it turns out the only person who is dead is the Viscount, who is found murdered in his locked and sealed study, killed with his own beloved family crossbow in a room that nobody entered or left, because it's a locked room murder mystery and no one has ever done that before. And that is where you meet the detective duo of the series. This is the first of the series, Stockham and Pike. He is Stephen Pike. He's our narrator. He's 19 years old, fresh out of Borstal for a crime that he didn't commit, on his very first day at work at World's End when all this happens. And she, Miss Decima Stockingham, is the Viscount's elderly aunt who's been effectively imprisoned in a corner of the mansion for her safety and others. She has a very foul temper, a foul mouth, but she's also a secret genius. Is the only person capable of solving the mystery before the killer strikes again.
Brilliant pitch. I can already see someone saying that they're ordering it immediately, which I absolutely recommend that you do. And you can see that both Ross and I are smiling because this may be a dark topic, but there is such humour in this novel, I cannot tell you. So tell us a bit about where the inspiration for the story came from, because I knew nothing, by the way, about the Halley's Comet Panic until I read your novel. Tell us about where the inspiration came from.
I think it's basically that, is that it's one of those weird blips of history that only ever gets mentioned in things like when people talk about like panics. It'll turn up in one of those lists. But
Yeah.
I found out about it the first time so my wife's family are Greek. And I think it was my wife's great grandfather lived in a very small village on the island of Lesbos called Pamphila. And he remembers his parents talking about the fact that, like, oh, this comet's going to go past. And they were discussing, well, should we go and stand on the nearby hill? Because maybe all the poisonous gases will settle at ground level. And I thought, this is just so cool. I knew that there was something in it. I wanted to write a story about it, but I just didn't know how I would take this incredible moment in history that has its own narrative. The way it played out is so fascinating. I thought, but how would I turn that into a story? Like, I couldn't really work out where characters would fit into it. And I kind of shelved it in the back of my mind. And then I think it was the point when I realized if the main reason people thought it was going to end the world is they thought it was going to flood the atmosphere with poisonous gases. And I thought, well, that's an opportunity to turn it into like this big, not even like a locked room murder mystery, but like a locked manor house murder mystery. Yeah. And that was it. The moment that I sort of found a place for it, I was like, that's it. It's a murder mystery. I've got to sort of go from there. And I'd never written one before, so I had to learn how to write a murder mystery.
Well, funnily enough, that was actually going to be my next question, because it's a really particular skill, I think. Not writing a whodunit is a particular skill, but writing a locked room is even more kind of challenging. How did you learn how to write a mystery like this?
I went into this thinking, like, oh, murder mystery, I'm doing a new thing. And I'm writing for adults for the first time. So there's all these challenges. It's going to be quite hard, but, I like a challenge. I just had no idea how challenging it is. I'd had no idea. I did a sort of similar sort of in-person event where I was being interviewed by another murder mystery writer called Tom Hindle. And he said, like, you started with a locked room. Like, you don't start with a locked room. They're really hard. I didn't know that because I think all the ones that I'd ever read, they would have been like classics. That I'm reading it being done by the experts in their field, and they're hiding ingeniously how difficult these books are to write.
Yes.
I think with that first book in particular, because I'm writing the second at the moment, it was learning on my feet as I went. And I think for me, that's probably the only way I've ever learned how to write is just trial and error and writing so much and going, no, it's not working. I'm getting there.
Same. I love that. I love that you went, full on ambitious. And it is intricately plotted, and I didn't guess who done it. And I'm quite I pride myself on my ability to see through these things. And I think part of that is because at the very heart of this book are two absolutely brilliant characters in Decima and Stephen and their relationship. It's an intergenerational friendship. It's some of the sharpest and funniest dialogue I've read in a long time. I actually laughed out loud, and people say that, but I genuinely laughed out loud. So you're almost distracted by these two characters. I'm wondering what made you write an intergenerational friendship.
I hadn't thought about that. About that, the humor is actually serving to distract from details that are
Actually,
happening.
yeah.
That's a really good point. I'm gonna save that. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
gonna
yeah.
pretend I meant to do it rather than you just point it out.
Add loads of funny in the second one, and no one will notice what's happening.
That's good. That's the plan. With that sort of Stephen and Decima and the way that I sort of balanced those two out, I think it happened because the very first step of the book was deciding that I was going to write about the Halley's Comet panic, and then I had to work out, well, what kind of book is it going to be? And I realized, oh, it's a murder mystery, and I wanted it to be a manor house murder mystery.
Yeah,
And then I thought, well, that's quite good because it means that I could have a central detective pair, and it could be an upstairs downstairs pairing. Because I really like detective pairs. I quite like. It's such a perfect way to get humor in because you get them sort of
yeah,
squabbling with each other.
yeah,
Especially if you get them sort of like from different like spheres of life and things like that. And so I played around in my head of, well, what could these, a servant and someone who lives there, who could they be? And I realized that because a lot of the book is about the comet, that I think one of them would have to be quite well versed in science. So for a while, I thought maybe it could be a maid teaming up with like a visiting tutor for like a young ward that lives in the on the estate. And I eventually the image that came to me was Queen Victoria in a wicker bath chair being pushed by Greg from Succession. And I was
I
like, yeah,
love
that's it.
this image.
It's the perfect combination. And I thought the moment I had it, I was like, yeah, I could write that. That would make sense. Um, I like the idea that they come from totally different spheres of life, and I like exploring the idea that they they have a lot to learn from each other in a way.
Yeah,
Because Miss Decima has had a very difficult life, but she is wealthy, and that gives her a lot of privilege and sort of power over Stephen, who's from a very poor background, but he's also a young man. And so that gives him an incredible amount of power over her, especially during like that period of society.
yeah.
And I think that's something I want to explore quite a lot, both with humor, but also just with what they have to learn from each other.
Yeah, I love that. And that relationship really is so beautifully and authentically done. Sorry, just going to keep being nice to you about your writing.
Don't
Um,
apologize. Keep it coming.
there is a real, but aside from Decima and Stephen, there's a real ensemble cast because you've got everybody who works in the house and all the guests that are there. Um, who was your favourite to write, and who was the most difficult to get right?
That's a good question. I knew that I think for me, part of the fun was I was like, this is great because basically all of the suspects, all of the Viscount's family who have like sort of turned up for this whole locked manor situation, I was like, they're all going to be horrible, but in different ways. And I got to have like real fun with like a cast of like disgusting characters. So I
Yes.
think, and I did that because I wanted to have fun writing it. There is I mean, the character that in general was most fun to write was definitely Miss Decima because
Yeah.
she doesn't care about anything, and that's just such a
No.
fun way to go into writing a character. She just burns everything to the ground around her. She's got nothing left to lose. There is another character who is a 6-year-old boy called Gilbert, and I sort of wrote it to be like, I just want to create the most disgusting child you've ever met in your entire life, like the kind of child that you just love to hate. Had loads of fun with that. That was great. The hardest character to write would have been Stephen, the narrator.
That's
I
interesting.
I had to work really, really, really hard at it, and it took me about 3 full drafts before I sort of got him kind of in the right place. And
Yeah.
both me and my agent knew that, he's the narrator. Like, you have to get his voice right, and until you get that voice right, the rest of the book just will not work. And I had this voice sort of niggling away at the back of my head for ages and ages and ages, and I was just trying to ignore for as long as possible. Uh, and the voice was saying, "He's you, and you just need to accept that he's you. And once you've
Oh,
accepted it, everything will be okay." And I eventually just went fine, and then like wrote it as me, and that made it work.
I love that. That's fantastic. Oh, now I feel like I know you even better, given
Well,
I've
that's the thing, right? Like I keep
yeah.
telling people as well, don't tell people. It's a dreadful
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, exactly. You're telling, by the way, there are lots of people watching and listening, just so you
It's
know.
fine. I'm
Yes.
going to own it. I'm going to lean in.
Brilliant. Well, let's move away from spotlight on Stephen and talk about the historical element, because I too have based both books I've written around real historical events. And this seems like a really good plan when you start. But then, if you're anything like me, and I will find out if you're anything like me, um, I get really obsessed with getting the historical detail right because I feel like it's really important to honour those events if I'm going to use them in my fiction, which can cause some real headaches. And you really went for it with the historical and scientific element. So, talk to us about research and how on earth you stopped researching.
Well, I think that's the trick to it, isn't it? Is that people think the hardest
Yeah,
thing is doing the research, and it's not. It's stopping.
yeah,
And the reason why I don't know if you've had the same thing. The reason I find it quite hard is every single time I'm going down a rabbit hole and I'm spending like hours reading about this thing, and I go, "This is just a waste of time." It's always at that point that I stumble upon one single detail that's
yeah,
really interesting and useful, and so it can be a bit addictive in a way.
yeah,
But I would say that the hardest thing is the having to accept that actually you don't really need that much for a book. It's about learning, and that every single edit I end up cutting more and more and more out until only like the most like valuable stuff is there. But I do think it's fun to kind of use as a structure for a book, like real
yeah,
things that happened. It does give you a structure, and I'd
yeah,
say for every single problem and headache that it presents you, it gives you a gift as well. That every now and then
yes,
you'll be I don't know if you've had this, but I'll just sort of stumble upon a bit that I had no idea was ever going to happen. I'll be like, it's given me everything I need, you know?
yeah, yeah. 100%. It's a kind of really spooky bit of alchemy that occurs, I think. And would you now see yourself as a bit of an expert around that particular Halley's Comet panic?
I will literally talk anyone to death about the Halley's Comet panic. It like I'm so used to the exact moment where the light dies in someone's eyes because I've been going on about it for like too long. It is interesting, and it's also there's not a huge amount that's been written about it.
No,
So I feel like my moment has come. I feel like if anybody wants to pay me to talk about it lots, I will. It's great. Um, like honestly, the way that panic played out and why it
yeah,
happened and how it happened is so interesting.
yes,
The reason that I find it interesting is because the gap every time that Halley's Comet goes past is about it's like 76 to 78 years. It kind of varies a
yeah,
little bit. And if you think about what happened between 1910 and the last time it would have gone past, which is like 1836, the amount the world had changed was huge. And like the comet
yeah,
had never even been photographed before. And so people were
yeah,
just so excited to like take photos of it and study it with science because all these incredible like scientific discoveries had happened. Um, but it was exactly that which caused the panic because they scanned the comet's tail to see what it was made of, and they found out that it contained, amongst loads of other stuff, poisonous cyanogen gases, and that's what made everyone panic. And I love that because they were trying to like take away superstition. They were trying to say like
yes,
look, it's not the end of the world. It's not like some kind of sign from the heavens that like a king is going to die. It's just stuff. And then it just made it worse. I love it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to get too historical, but I mean, I feel like it's got quite a lot to tell us about ourselves now.
I do think I think that's maybe why I was so interested about writing it, because I
Yeah.
find it really amazing that every generation thinks during their generation that the world's going to end. Like we had one not that long ago, which it was entirely on TikTok, and it was evangelical Christians believing that the world was going to end on a very specific date, and I think it was called Rapture Talk.
Oh,
But it was great. The whole thing just like it was like a flash in a pan of for a few weeks there were loads of videos being uploaded about like people building shelters and like giving advice for how to like prepare for the end of days. And then there was one day where they were all filming the sky, going like, "It's still not ending." And then the day after, everybody deleted all their videos. Like, I love it.
That's really funny because my second book is set in the 1980s, and part of it is about the kind of Cold War panic. I guess you might call it. I mean, it was a real thing. But we all thought the world was going to end in the 1980s as well. So you're absolutely right. You've nailed something there. I think that's so interesting.
It's just that weird thing. It does make you feel it's kind of comforting in a way. If you're like, oh, we're the last
Yeah,
generation. Like there's
it
something
is.
about that that makes you feel important and
Yeah.
sort of yeah, like gives you something to look forward to.
It does indeed. Right. So I'm going to move away from the world stage and go to some of the amazing questions
Oh God.
that were submitted. And the first one, actually, I was going to ask you this as well, but Anna Escudero asked, what's driven you to change from children and young adult fantasy to adult murder mysteries? What an about turn.
So I in the UK, I've been writing kids books for about 15 years.
Mm.
And I haven't had all of
You
them
don't look
like
old
only
enough.
exactly you say that. I started young. Um but only a few of them have come out in America. And I so in the UK, I think I keep getting the number wrong, but it's something like 32 books.
What?
And that's sort of over like I've done picture books and I've done like little early readers for young kids, and then like lots of sort of middle grade books as well.
Mm.
And over that time, I'd sort of been gradually amassing ideas that I just knew they would never work as kids' books for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And I think with the Halley's Comet Panic, I was like, I want to write about this, but I just don't think it would be possible to make that a kids' book. It's too weird and it's too specific. But also, I think that part of the joy of it is like this weird thing that happened, like people behaved weirdly. And I think
Yeah.
as far as children are concerned, people are weird. Adults do behave weirdly to them all the time, so it's not of any
Mhm.
interest. They're like,
Mhm.
don't understand any of it. Um, I think also part of it was that in all of those 15 years, with the exception of my very first kids' book, every book that I'd ever written had been to a contract. So there was a degree of security there. And I hadn't, in like 15 years, sat down and written a whole book from start to finish with just like hope of just like, I'm just going to do it because I think I've got something here and I'm going to send it out and cross my fingers. And I was like, I think that's something that I would like to try again, even if it doesn't work. There's something
Yeah.
doing it for like the challenge of just like
Yeah.
believing in something and doing it. Um,
Yeah.
and it's worked out so far, so I'm chuffed about that.
Yeah, it really has, Ross. It's really worked out. And following on from that, Jennifer Franklin asks, how different was the process of writing for adults versus children? I mean, there's certainly more swearing in The
There is
Murder at World's End.
one could argue there's more swearing.
Hmm.
There's more like adult joke content. Weirdly, actually, one of the reasons why I had to do three drafts before it ended up kind of pulling together a bit better, a lot of that was to do with not being able to get Stephen's voice quite right. But actually, one of the bigger issues was I went into writing with so much excitement because I was like, oh, I get to write an adult book and I could do all this stuff. And I can use this higher register of language that I'm not really allowed to do when I'm writing kids' books. And actually, it made the tone incredibly uneven because it is. I wanted to write a book that was funny and it's got like
Yeah.
gags in it, but then it was sort of trying to be quite lofty. And the best description that I could give to explain what it was like was that episode of Friends where Rachel makes a trifle, but she sticks the two pages together in the recipe book, and so she makes a trifle that's also half a shepherd's pie. It
Yes.
was just a nightmare. Um,
Yeah.
and the thing that made it work was I was like, you know what, you've spent 15 years writing kids books and you've learned over that time how to do it better
Yeah.
than when you started. So I felt like I was getting rid of everything I'd learned. And I thought, why don't you try writing it as if it was a kid's book? And the moment that I did it, I was like, okay, well, I need to cut out the first 15,000 words because they're not doing anything, get rid of them. And then I was like, yeah, I need to end every single chapter on a little moment of intrigue because you sort of have to do that with a kid's book. You have to give them a really concrete reason for writing it. And I think once I started leaning back on all of that learned knowledge, it just made it work a bit better, but with swearing.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's amazing, because I haven't read any of your children's books, and yet I wouldn't have guessed almost that you'd ever been a children's writer. So it doesn't, you've managed to nail that, I think, in this.
I genuinely believe I think that like kids authors are like an underused resource in terms of like
Yeah.
kind of like writing crime, writing thrillers, writing murder mysteries,
Yes.
because they're really, really good at being like basically, if you haven't interested a child and hooked them in one page, they stop reading.
They're
They're like, no.
lost. Yeah.
And it's perfect. Like that's what you want in like, a page turner.
Yeah, and actually that makes the kind of leap into murder mysteries feel incredibly logical. Yeah, that's great. Brilliant. So how long did it take you? Now, we've already heard that you did three drafts. So Erin Cardoni would like to know how long it took you to finish The Murder at the World's End, and how long does it typically take you to finish a book?
I think this first book in the series took me about 2.5 to 3 years.
Mm.
And that's a lot longer than it normally takes me. But it was because I was having to write this alongside writing all of my other books that I was contracted for. So I Am Rebel, I was writing at the same time as this.
Yeah.
I was writing The Murder at World's End in the morning and then having lunch and then writing I Am Rebel. But this is the thing, right? So I keep wheeling out this anecdote and I think it makes me sound very pretentious and I
Yeah, go
keep
for it.
doing it. It's never stopped me. But Steven Spielberg was filming Jurassic Park during the day. And then in the evenings, he would go to his trailer and he would edit Schindler's List. He was making both of them at the same time, albeit at like different stages. And when he was then asked about that, and they said, well, how on earth do you balance these two completely different projects? He said, no, it makes it easier because one is a holiday from the other. And I think that is incredibly
Yes,
true. I think
that
if I was
makes
writing
sense.
two, I think if I was writing two murder mysteries, that would maybe melt my brain. But
Yeah,
because it was these completely different stories with their own focuses and their own like tone, maybe a better way to describe it was that writing one makes you feel like you're skiving off the other, so it's like you're
yeah,
cheating.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, generally speaking, a middle grade kids book I've always taken about a year and a half to do, and that's actually quite a long time to take writing a kids book. I think they expect you to do it quicker. With these books, I'm now going to be doing one a year because I've told them I'm going to do that, and we'll see how that goes.
we will. I mean, this is it's so funny to me because I'm like a book every 2 years, and if you're lucky. So talk us about your writing routine then, because you've already sort of said that you wrote these ones, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. But what's your typical writing routine? And Kerry Hughes asked that question.
My typical writing routine is currently a bit more chaotic because I've also had my first baby. So I've had to find a way of like
Yes.
adjusting around that. The nice thing is we found a way to like make it work. But you just have to be so disciplined. You have to just sort of accept that like there probably would have been a time when I would allow myself a little bit more of a leisurely way into it when I was going to
Mhm.
write. And now it's like, no, you've got 3 hours, you're at a cafe, and if you don't do it, it's not going to get done. So that's it at the moment. I'll leave the house about 8 in the morning, go to a cafe down the road. I will have done all of my admin by 9 a.m. because if I haven't done it, I'm in trouble. And then
Yes.
I would say if it's brand new writing, I can probably do like, blank page, putting something on it. I can probably do about 2 to 3 hours before my head starts to melt a
Yes.
bit.
Yes.
Are
Yes.
you
Yes.
the
Yes.
same? Yeah.
That exactly the same.
Editing,
Yeah.
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 Editing, I feel I can do that all day if I'm
Yeah.
on a bit of a roll. But I'd say probably double the amount of time, something like that, depending on like how far along it is. Um, but yeah, that's it at the moment. I haven't been able to do it over the last year because of sort of parenting my baby. But she's just started nursery, and I have just started picking up writing another kids book again. So I'm back to the balance of doing a murder mystery in the mornings and then a kids book in the afternoon, and it's
Perfect.
fun. It might not work, but we'll see.
Fun, madness, they're they're kind of closely aligned,
I'm
I
fine.
feel.
I'm not exhausted. I'm fine.
Yeah, you're totally fine. John Goldsmith had an excellent question, which is he discovered your novel while reading the blog In Search of the Classic Mystery Novel by the Puzzle Doctor. Which golden age detective fiction author is the best? I can see John's there saying that's my question. I
Hi,
thought it was
John.
a great question.
So there's two different ways for me to answer this, and I guess that part of it is the one of the reasons why I think I discovered that I was slightly out of my depth when I started writing this was that I thought that I was well read in murder mysteries, and I think writing
Yeah,
one made me realize that I wasn't as well read as I thought I was, which is quite a scary thing to learn when I'd started doing one. So actually, I feel like I'm reading a lot more of them now that I've started doing it, and I'm catching up a little bit. Um, but there's the other way to answer that question, which is that the obvious it's just always Agatha Christie. Like it is just Agatha Christie. Like
it just is, isn't it? Yeah.
she just did, and like I think it's one of those things of maybe if I was like so much more well versed in this, I might be at a point where I'm like, well, she's great and everything, but actually, blah, 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 blah. But she's absolutely unbelievable at it. I'm only just at the point now where I'm beginning to read her books that aren't quite as good as her best work, where you're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this one isn't that great. It's still great. Like her
Yeah.
worst book is better than the best book I could ever write. Like that's the sort of level that I'm on. One of the nicest ones was I read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd without knowing anything about it. And normally, I think when people read that book, they're told, you need to read this book because, and then they will sort of slightly give away why you need to read it. So I didn't see
Right.
any of it coming. It was like,
No.
I was just hit cold by how brilliant it was. And that's such a treat when that happens.
So don't say anything else because I haven't read it. So
Okay, fine.
I obviously need to read it. In fact, I'm really ashamed to say my first foray into Agatha Christie has been this year. Basically, a friend of mine, Kathy Rensenbrink, is writing
Oh, yeah.
a biography. It's not a biography of Agatha Christie, it's more a memoir associated with Agatha Christie. And I was proofreading it and it made me read Agatha Christie. And now I'm on this journey. So say nothing more about Roger Ackroyd and I will make sure that I put it next.
That's it. Don't do any research. Just start reading it and see what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, definitely. And I'll report back. So Pras Patel asks, how do you decide if an idea is good enough to be turned into a novel? This is a great question.
That's a really good question.
Mm,
I've definitely I know that I've gotten better at having a bit of an internal judge in terms of like
yeah.
that's not going to work or that will. And I think honestly, the only way I've learned that is by like hard knocks of it's very, very, very difficult to differentiate between something that you were incredibly passionate about and something that you know is going to work as a book. And I think, yeah, I've had a few. a few upsetting moments as an author where that's been made very clear to me.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
I think I guess the thing that I've started being a lot more like bloodless about with writing
Mm,
is that I think it's the main character, and that's the only thing that really, really, truly is like indispensable in how much it matters. That actually, I
yes.
think you can plot a book not very well, and you could probably write a murder mystery that's maybe a bit flabby and a bit of a letdown. But as long as your main character is incredibly compelling and really well written and has an amazing voice, I think that's all people really, really care about. They want to spend time with that character and they want to be
Yeah,
led through by them. And I've read loads of books where like the mystery is absolutely amazing and really, really impressive. But I haven't necessarily wanted to read more of them
yeah,
because actually it's just that it's the character. Like
yeah.
they're the reason that they will want to keep you reading. And I think that that's for me that's now like the absolute like lowest basic level that if I can't think of who my main character is and what they want and what their motivation is and what keeps them going through the story, then I don't think it's worthwhile me writing it.
Yeah,
Is probably it.
that's absolutely true. And it's made me realize that, I am a real fan of this book, as you know. And I
Oh,
think what really differentiates it actually is it is really, really sharply plotted. It's a fantastic mystery, but the character work really elevates it. And so I think that kind of philosophy shines through. Um, and let's
thank you.
just talk about plotting. So I make an assumption that somebody who writes a lottery mystery absolutely is a plotter, not a pantser. For anybody that isn't a writer, plotter, people who plot it all out, spreadsheets and all of that. Pantser is someone who flies by the seat of their pants. However, I have heard of crime writers who are pantsers. So, where do you lie on that kind of spectrum?
I almost every single book that I've written, I've taken like a different approach to it, and it's sort of I'll go
Oh,
with what like
interesting.
feels right for the book. Of like this book
Right.
is a pantsing book. With these, I just maybe there'll come a point where I don't know, maybe I'll be 10 books in and I'll be like, yeah, I'll see what happens. But at the moment, it's
Yeah.
pure planning to like a ridiculous degree. I have
Oh, really?
spreadsheets, like it just like that was particularly with this one that actually I realized I kind of learned the hard way that my kids' books are usually adventure stories. And that's really useful because you get to send them on a journey and you get to put them in different scenarios because they're moving and the landscape gets to reflect the kind of it'll come with its own
Yeah.
challenges, its own problems. But with this, I was like, no, they're stuck in one location and it's a house.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
everyone's going to know where everyone is. And not
Yes.
only did that mean that I was struggling for like kinetic movement in the book, but also I was like, how am I going to stop that character noticing this thing that happens? How am I going to get this suspect moving around? And I had to plot all the characters out on a spreadsheet and be like, right,
Yeah.
they're over there, so they can't do that. I have to move them around to there. My basically one of the other. I would say that the author that's probably taught me more about writing than any other author is Lee Child, and he's
Oh,
like
fantastic.
he's
Yes.
the uber pantser. Like he writes his books a
Hey.
sentence at a time. Do you know about? So I've got to be careful because I'll
Yeah.
talk about him for the rest of the session. But he writes one draft. He doesn't rewrite. He starts it on the 1st of September. He doesn't know what is going to be in his books, and he writes it a sentence at a time. And at the end of every sentence, he goes, "What does my writer want? What does my reader want to know next?" And it's you can actually see it as you read through the books that they're just pure logic. And I think another thing I learned the hard way is murder mysteries are like all about logic. It's like the machine that drives
Yes.
them. And I think reading him and reading how he goes about explaining these mysteries and these thrilling circumstances was like a masterclass. I recommend it.
Wow. I did not know that. I'm taking notes here. Um, so you clearly read crime and mysteries, as do I. Um, so what? other genres? What's your favorite genre as a reader?
I tend to go through phases. Like,
Mhm.
I won't like read really widely or whatever. I'll sort of have a period of time where I'll kind of focus on one thing. At the moment, I've really been enjoying reading horror again. And I did that a few years ago, and then I was like, I'm not going to read horror now. But I'm back on it, and it's just good fun. I can't help myself. The one I'm reading at the moment is, and it's I've been reading it for ages, even though it's a real page turner. But it's
Mhm.
just because it's huge. Is King Sorrow by Joe Hill, which is
Oh, yes,
like
I've got that. Yeah,
I, breaking your spine every time you take it off a bookshelf because it's like
yeah.
that big or whatever. But I love it. Like I spent my teenage years reading like doorstop horror fiction, and now I get to
Yeah.
come back to it. It's great.
How wonderful. Maybe we'll see a horror novel from you, do you think?
About 10 years ago. I wrote a book that was a compendium of short horror stories for children, but they were short Christmas themed horror stories. It was called Christmas Dinner of Souls. I love it because it's maybe the weirdest thing I've ever written. It also might be the
Mhm.
worst selling book that I've ever written. I think it's the only thing I've written that's gone out of print, and for that reason, it's close to my heart.
Oh my, that's so lovely. I can quite imagine that in the future we'll see a horror book from you, but you've got to keep with the Stockingham and Pike for the
Oh
foreseeable
yeah, I'm
future.
all over that.
Yeah, good. But I'm gonna apart from my very last question, which is from me, I'm gonna end on a deep one from Katie Westland, which is what did you learn about yourself from writing the book?
Oh wow.
I know.
Oh God, what did I learn about myself? I think that it was quite. I'm such a cautious person in my life. Like, I mean,
Mm.
I'm really, really cautious. I don't like taking risks. I sort of like things to be um, sort of incredibly even as much as I can. And every time I have to do something that's even slightly outside of my comfort zone, I go, yeah. Um, and I think weirdly, the only area in my life where that is not the case has maybe been writing. That I really, it's one of the only areas where I've really enjoyed taking risks and trying on something new. And I think maybe that's the thing I learned from doing this was I don't think I realized until after it was done how big a leap it had been and like how
Mhm.
much I'd sort of had to sort of try something that was completely new. And yeah, maybe I could stand to learn that a little bit more. I'll spread that into my wider life.
Okay, we're going to see some risk taking. That's excellent.
Bungee
Um,
jumps every day.
so you said that you're writing a children's book and the next Stockingham and Pike
Oh yeah.
murder. What can you tell us about both those books? A little tease for everyone who's watching.
So I got in trouble with my editor for
Oh,
telling like
okay.
too much about the
Uh-huh.
next document Pie book. So I've been told very firmly what I can say and what I can't say.
Okay.
My plan for the series is I want every single book to take place a year after the previous one. And I want
Hmm.
each book to kind of center around a lesser known moment in history. Kind of like the Halley's Comet pattern. You
Yeah.
know, I get to like, that's the
Love it.
centerpiece of that. Next one. So without giving too much away, because my editor will kill me, the next book is set in 1911,
Hmm.
and Stockham and Pike are now living in London, and they are taking part in their most complex and difficult case yet, which is centered around a key moment in the women's suffrage movement that I
Oh,
had no idea about, and I think is really, really interesting and really cool.
yeah.
I'd love to tell you what that moment was, but I can't, so I'm not
But you
going to.
can't. Okay. Damn. What can you tell us about the children's book?
The children's book at the moment is a. Now, this is the interesting thing. So, I've actually got a few kids' books that are going to be coming out in America before this one because I think they're sort of
Oh.
going through my backlist. But this one is a sort of classic, like treasure hunt style story because I've just fallen back in love with like kids' books with maps in them. And I'm like, I just want to go full in on the maps, man.
That's
Maps,
so
maps,
funny.
maps.
My second novel has a map at the front, and it's like the most exciting thing I think that happened to me. That says a lot about my sad life.
I
But
just
yeah.
but like everyone likes them. Nobody ever
Oh,
says, you
who
know what I
doesn't love
hate? A
a map?
book with a map in it. It's so rubbish. Maps
Yeah,
everywhere.
I'm with you all the way. I mean that they both sound amazing, Ross. I am slightly put to shame by how prolific you are. If you could just slow down a bit, I think that would be great. Maybe not for your editor, but it'd be great for the rest of us.
Yeah, I think like the universe might be conspiring against me in that regard because I'm really tired. But for the meantime, it's just so much fun. I can't help myself.
Oh, and I'm really glad. And actually, your love and passion for books and writing has just absolutely shone through in this
Thank
conversation.
you.
I've enjoyed it immensely,
Not as
Ross.
much as I've enjoyed it. I've been receiving praise left, right, and centre. Thank you.
Well, it's really well deserved praise. And even though I haven't got the right cover, can you get your your copy back up?
Yeah, of course. There we go.
Yeah, this is kind of my special edition proof. But obviously, Murder at the Well's End is available to buy in store and online. But also, if you bought, I'm going to remember to say it, if you bought a ticket with a book bundle, your book will be delivered within 8 to 10 days. Did I do it right?
You nailed that. I was going to say book bundle as a reminder, but I forgot the second word was bundle. So I was just going like book,
Book.
book, book, book.
Well, I mean, I can't recommend this novel enough. If I hope my love of it has shone through too, and thank you for being so generous and open this evening, Ross, and thank you everyone for coming.
Well, no, thank you. Honestly, thanks so much, Jenny. Thank you for amazing questions, everybody. They were brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye bye.